What's up, YouTube? How's it going? This is Wraithyn here. A bunch of my viewers and people that I play with have asked me to do a tier list or a set of tier lists focused around beginners to a certain role. What do you want to play? What do you want to focus on to make sure that you are not setting yourself behind by picking a certain god or whatever. And so I wanted to compile this tier list of junglers. So if you're thinking about stepping into the role or you're not very confident, I can give you a pretty good list of the gods at beginner levels of play or even medium levels of play that are going to excel no matter what. I will be following this up with several how-to videos on some of the top gods. So you'll see once we compile the list together, you can see which ones I picked. I'll be doing a video on kind of the tips and tricks of that, so make sure you subscribe so that you can have access to how to play these gods now that you've picked them. When I evaluated these, I wanted to not just do it based on meta, right? Meta gods come in and out all the time. We wanted to pick gods that, regardless of kind of what's going on in the meta, whether they're buffed or nerfed, they're going to be pretty strong for a newer player, mostly because the things that make them weak at higher levels of play don't really apply to newer people. So the things I evaluated on were meta, difficulty of their kit, and how easy it is to understand. So difficulty understanding and how easy it is to play. Safety, so if they have lots of escapes, lots of CC immunity, lots of mitigations, right, they were generally higher on the list than the other ones. And then the last piece of criteria that I wanted was effectiveness from behind, because there's certain gods where even if you're down 6 levels, right, your ult is still going to have an impact. Your stuns are still going to have an impact. Your clear is still going to have an impact. I mean, there's certain things that some of these gods do even when they're behind that are still useful, right? Again, I play with new players a lot of the time. This is driven from my experience with newer players who are learning new roles, a lot of friends that I've had that have joined the game. So this is not a Bible of what you should and shouldn't play. Don't feel like just because something's lower on the list that you shouldn't play it. This is just my perception of what gods are easiest for newer players and what you're probably going to succeed on more often than not. So with that, we'll dive into the list. And as always, let me know in the comments section if you agree, disagree, or are pissed at me because I put your favorite god at the bottom. All right, so starting off, first and foremost, Arachne goes in SS tier. This god is the most busted god in the entire game. She wins more than everyone at every level of play, highest win rate, easiest to understand, low skill shots, right? I mean, her 3 is really the only thing that you have to try to hit, and it has a big, long, wide hit area at the end of it, right? So, in terms of just general abilities, Arachne is very easy to play. She's the best 1v1 god in the game, and especially at lower levels of play, you're going to find people out of position a lot more often than at higher levels of play, away from their supports or just out kind of wandering the map. So Arachne absolutely frags. What's really important is that you get the build right on her and your initial pathing for the early game, but we'll cover that in another video. Moving on, the next 2 gods that I think are absolutely essential for a new jungler player, we're going to go Rat and we're going to go Ravana. The reason Rat and Ravana work so well is 2 things. We'll start with Ratatasker. His early game is extremely strong. He's got a dash to get himself out of trouble or into trouble. He has protection shred, so even at the end of the game, if you got to build him hybrid and you dive in and you use your 2 on everybody, you're still going to have an impact on the team fight. He's got a global ult that can get him out of trouble or into trouble again. So Rat is really one of those gods where you cannot screw up playing Rat. He's very, very simple to play. That's definitely going to be one of our videos, is how to play Ratatasker. He is, second to Arachne. I think Rat's probably the best god for a newer player to learn. He gives you a little bit of a skill shot with the Acorn on the 3, so you can practice setting up stuns and comboing your abilities. But realistically, he's pretty straightforward to play. Ravana is exactly the same, but with a little bit more safety built in and no global ult. So Ravana's 1, very simple ability. It's giant cone. It slows. His 3 is a root. So using those 2 abilities combo together, very easy for newer players to understand. But I would say the big differentiator about Ravana is that you have his 2, which does damage. It is also makes him CC immune, which is super impactful because if you have a Magi's Cloak in your build, his 2, and beads, you get 3 sources of CC immunity where you can just walk at the enemy players, build kind of tanky, and destroy them. Lastly, Ravana's ult does a ton of damage. It's kind of hard to hit for, people who aren't really experienced with it, but we'll go over that in the Ravana video. But the deal with Ravana's ult is that when you land, you get a whole bunch of mitigations, and then you can continue walking at players. Ravana's also really good because when playing from behind, you build them a little bit tanky, and you dive the backline, and you still blow people up. All right, moving on. We got Erlang and Achilles. Same reasons as Ravana here. These are both two warrior junglers. They've got decent base damage, so their early game is good. Their scaling is okay. I mean, it's not like anything crazy like an ability-based assassin, but the whole point is that if you build them kind of tanky, kind of not, or even full damage, at the end of the game, you're going to be swinging, right? So you can just walk at those backline characters with Achilles or Erlang. Both of them have great mobility, self-sustain, good lockdown between the stun and the pin, the stun on Achilles and the pin on Erlang, and great chase potential if somebody's trying to run away from you. It's a really good quality that you want when you are picking out a jungler. Is if somebody uses their mobility to get away from me, how do I deal with that? I will definitely at least be doing Erlang as another video, maybe Achilles. I think Achilles has some weird, he may have shifted out a bit just because of the way they changed his kit recently. But a lot of folks that I talked to before making this video still think that he's incredibly strong. All right, next we're going to move on to A+, and the first two gods that we're going to start with are gods that even if you get to late game, you're still going to have an impact on the team fight, even though that you're behind or you're not confident or you're engaging poorly, and that is going to be Daji and Hun Bats. Both of them have heavy beads burning ultimates that are going to make them an asset to your team. Basically, if you blink in or 3 in or leap in with Hun Bats or Daji and dump your ultimate and get a whole bunch of beads out, you're still useful to your team, right? It's totally different than, I don't know, somebody like a Wheelix, right? Where if you jump into a team fight, or if you leap into a backline in a team fight, all you have is your kit, and that's it. You may lock down one character, but that's all you have. These two team fight ults are great for burning beads, great for getting ultimates out early so people don't use them on your team, because they're using them for the CC immunity. The only caveat here, and the reason these guys aren't higher, is because you got to really pay attention to how the enemies are using their beads relics, right? So you really want to be super cognizant. Your team has to communicate to you of when those relics are down. So that's why they're a little bit lower on the list. Both super impactful gods, both very good for new players. They do a ton of damage. Hun Bats, I think in particular, is a great one for new players to learn on, because his kit at a really low level is very, very basic. But as you get better and better with him, you start utilizing his passive. You start doing auto attack cancels. You start teleporting to the 3 to auto attack cancel. He becomes a really, really good fluid god where if you get a good mastery of him, you can stomp people better than you can with Arachne. So I really like Hun Bats. I think just due to the complexity of his kit, he's a little bit further down the list for new players. But he's definitely one of those guys where if you master them, you're going to have a great time on either one of these two. The next one is Thanatos. Thanatos is not at the top like Rat is, just because I think he lacks a lot of the CC and chase. He has slow immunity on his 2 and a little bit of speed, but it's not something quick and immediate like a dash. He has great sustain. He has great early farm. He has no mana problems early in the game. I think with a lot of these gods, if you're dumping abilities onto camps, you run out of mana very quickly. Thanatos doesn't have that problem because of the way his passive works. If he gets ahead, he's insane. If he gets behind, you can build him kind of tanky and just ult into team fights, and kind of like Hun Bats and Daji, as long as you get that big stun off and get people's abilities and actives out, you're still valuable to your team, and you can kind of sneak attack them from the air with that. Again, he's kind of a stomper god, so if you're playing against enemies that are not as experienced, Thanatos will be your go-to guy. Moving on to the next tier, these are gods where there's a little bit more complexity to their kit. They are a little bit harder to hit with some abilities. They're certainly viable, and I think due to certain things like how you clear or how you play them through the early and mid game, these gods are a little bit tougher for newer players because newer players love to fight, right? The second you clear camps and you hit level 2, thanks weekend, a lot of newer players are like, I gotta fight. Some of these characters are not good at that, which is fine, because they excel in the late game, but you have to remember that when you're going through it. The first one of them is definitely Ao Kuang. Kuang is one of those gods where if you get 3 or 4 items on him and you press 2 and auto attack literally anybody on the map, they're dead. It doesn't matter who it is. If it's a tank, you ult them. If it's anybody else, they die instantly. The problem is, and the problem that a lot of newer players face is using him in that early mid game is tough. Your ganks have to be almost surgical with the way that you do it, where you kind of wait until somebody's half health, and then you tell your solo lane or bully them down, and you kind of blink in the last second, do a bunch of damage, and ult them, right? You know, getting that down is tough for newer players, but if you understand how to play Kwang, I mean, he's easily up in the S tier bracket, right? Second one would be Camazotz. Camazotz is not a particularly strong jungler. He's got 2.5 skill shots in his normal abilities, which, you know, not the greatest thing if you're somebody who is not used to that style of play, or if you're a mage and you like big AoE abilities. Camazotz is going to give you trouble. I did put him in A because he does have a lot of safety and sustain. Once he gets into these fights, he can fight a lot. He does a bunch of damage, and then he can ult himself to safety with his ult, which is CC immune, has a really short pre-fire time, so you get up into the air really, really quickly, right? You know, kind of middle of the pack, still a good god, you know, not going to give you too much trouble if you pick him, but again, he's not in the strongest of places right now, so I would kind of avoid him unless you're looking for somebody that's safe and can just kind of get into fights and stay there. The next one along the same lines is, where is he? Trying to find him. There it is, Fenrir. Fenrir, same thing. His abilities are actually a little more difficult to hit than people give credit for. You know, his one is a straight up down leap. It's a very small landing area. Oops, sorry. Very small landing area, and it's 90% of his CC in his entire kit, or at least the stuff that you can use constantly. So that's part of the reason I put him in this category. Number two, the 3 can be tough to hit sometimes, depending on what kind of cast you have on it. If you don't have a target selected, you can still use this ability. So if you're off even just a little bit, you kind of juke out to the side. He does a bunch of damage. You can build him super tanky and be utility for your team, which is one of the reasons I have him up in the A category. But Fenrir is actually not a terrible god. I think if you get used to the way that he plays, then you can absolutely utilize him effectively, which is why he's not kind of at the bottom. But again, he's not stronger than any of these other gods, and I definitely wouldn't recommend him over anybody else. That's kind of the reason he's down here. Same thing with Neja. Neja has 3 skill shots, right, that have various timing and can put you extremely far out of position if you don't use them effectively, right? So if you're a newer player in jungle, you're not really sure where you should be with your positioning. You're not really aware of who's around, who has follow-up damage, both from your team and the enemy team. Neja can be very, very tough for new players. His 1, it's great if you're trying to get used to skill shots. His sash, if you sash the wrong person and you're not damn sure where everybody else is on the map, you could be walking right into an ass kicking. Same thing with his ult. When you ult with Neja, you're not only setting up your team, you're setting up their team, right? So I have a perfect opportunity to pick off the enemy Neja once he goes up into the air. If I'm a Scylla or if I'm a Ra and I know the timing, I know when my teammate's coming down, but I also know when the Neja is coming down, right? So unless you're really, really cognizant of how you're using abilities and how you're playing, Neja is just not a good pick. He's a very strong jungler right now in the meta, and he can be built both, you know, aggressively or tanky to set up your team. But I wouldn't recommend him. The only reason he's in the middle of the pack here is because if you feel confident with his abilities, you feel confident with his skill shots, he's still a very good god right now. Pele's kind of your run-of-the-mill, middle-of-the-pack type god. She's pretty strong when ahead. She can be built with a bunch of lifesteal and damage and do well. I don't think she's particularly good unless she's in the hands of somebody who has her mastered. But if you pick her, you know what? She's got some good CC. She's got a slow. She's got a knock up. And her ultimate gives her some mobility. But she really doesn't do anything that kind of like wows me for a new player. She's fun to play, but not really up there high on my list of gods that I would pick. The same vein, before we even do this, I love Thor. I think Thor is one of the most fun gods to play. But he is not strong right now. There's some things about his kit that make him difficult to play. Some of the ways the mechanics of the kit go off. You know, if you're a new player and you want to play Thor, most of the time what you're doing is ulting, landing, spinning, and then using your hammer to get out, right? There's a huge amount of nuance to playing Thor when it comes to doing things like landing double taps or, you know, doing the full combo of your ult where you get the right amount of basic attacks in depending on how much your abilities are leveled up and whatnot. And Thor to me is one of those gods where you could play him, well enough on the surface, but there's such a gap between that surface level knowledge and really, really using him effectively. And with a god that's not necessarily strong, the only people who are doing well on Thor are the people who can use him at the top tier level of play. That being said, the reason he's not in like the dumpster down in the bottom in D tier is Thor has a lot of mobility and a lot of CC, right? So if I'm not in a fight that I need to be in, I can ult and I can get there. You don't have that luxury with a lot of other gods, right? His stun is incredibly valuable. He can teleport through walls with his hammer, so he's relatively safe. And realistically, at the end of the game, if all you do is land on 4 people and press 3, you've kind of done your job, right? So for a newer player, he's a little bit more complicated. If you can use him well, he does better. But he's certainly not a top tier jungler of any kind. And to use him super, super effectively, you need to be very, very good at his combo. I'll probably do a Thor guide at some time. I'm not the greatest Thor, but I love to play him. So we'll try and help out people who want to get good at him. I'm hoping someday they buff him. He's been out of the meta for a while now, and I think that'd be really good. All right, moving on to the next tier. What do we got here? We got a Wheelix, we got Merc, we got Susano. All right, so these are gods that either due to their kit or the way they play or their strength in the late game, I just wouldn't recommend them for somebody who is new, right? A Wheelix, really strong early game, but her kit's pretty complicated if you think about it, right? Utilizing the knockups, the auto attacks, the positioning where you got to get behind somebody to fire your Suku to pull them out of the air, knowing when beads timers are down so you know the right people to pull, knowing who to pull, who not to pull, and when to utilize your kit. That's a lot of overwhelming information for somebody who's new to jungle, right? Like there's a lot more basic kits that you can deal with on gods that are much better in the late game, listed above, where you don't have to try and memorize nuance of somebody's kit. The same thing kind of goes for Merc. I think Merc's one of those gods where everybody that plays him likes to play him all in. They build 5 items, they ult into a team fight, whether there's 5 people or 10 people, and then they try and auto attack down everybody in front of them. Merc, I think, excels when you're very, very good at positioning and utilizing your ult effectively in those team fights. I was kind of hesitant to put him down in B+. I think the reason I did was because he does have kind of a weak early game. If he didn't have that, he may have been up in the A+ range, because that ultimate of his is still super, super impactful, even late game, even if you are 5 levels down, right? If you ult through 5 people in the middle of a team fight, you give him that dazed status, you could still have an impact on the team fight, right? But he's got a really weak early game. If you're not confident and you don't know your pathing very well, he could fall behind pretty significantly. So I have him down here in B+. Susano is another one of those where his kit is super, super complicated to use at a very high level. He's kind of like a Thor, but without the global ult. If you're not auto attack canceling and using your mobility and using your pull knock-up into the ult knock-up, and you don't know the 18 different or however many combinations it is of how you use Susano's abilities to run people down, in which situations you should use them in, Susano's a pretty tough god. On the surface, he's really not, right? You press 1, use your 2, use your 3, and ult people. You could probably get by just fine without doing any of the auto attack canceling, but again, he's kind of like a Thor where if you really, really want to play him well, you got to get all that stuff down, right? All right, moving on. This B category, the reason I listed him here is these are gods that, are very, very complex to play, either from a farming or a team fight perspective. These are gods where, you can play them. They're certainly viable. They're certainly good in the role. But you have to have really, really, really good awareness of things like relics and abilities and all these other variables that go into, where's Nem? Had Nem higher, actually. All these relics and abilities that go into a team fight. And that level of attention being paid to what's going on in the game is not something that newer players are usually very good at, right? So just to start with Nem, I put her in B+ because her kit's really easy to understand. Her ult's impossible to miss, but she doesn't really do anything other than slow people. So she's in the B+ category for that. Moving on, Bakasura. Baka usually has great farm. You can almost always get ahead on Baka, but the way that you play Baka into the team fights is super, super important. You have to pay attention to not only who has their relics up, who has their relics down, who's used their mobility, has the Merlin blinked yet or flickered yet, has the Kumba used his mez, the Athena used his taunt, or used her taunt, right? These are all things you have to be thinking about when you play gods like Bakasura, Hebo, Kali, and Serket, right? Because if you get turned on at any point and people have their Aegis up or what have you, you're going to die. And so most of the time, these are like super cleanup gods where you almost want your team to engage first, bait out a bunch of abilities, and then you go in and you do your work, right? Baka, you can get ahead early. Hebo's kind of got a really weak early game. Needs a whole lot of power and cooldown to feel effective, but late game, he does a ton of damage. I think he struggles with farm early game. And again, this is one of those Neja situations where when you use your ult on Hebo, you are putting yourself into the team fight even further. So you got to be very surgical about when you're doing that with a blink or whatever, right? Kali, same thing. She doesn't have CC immunity in her kit. I don't even think she has slow immunity in her kit. So you almost have to be aware of what's up and what's down at all times to be able to go in. Because if you blink in, you go for the stun, you go for the 2, and then you go to auto somebody down, and they've got beads, Aegis, horrific, and all their CC up, Kali gets smacked. Serket, kind of the same thing along the lines of Neja. The deal with Serket is that when she attaches to a target, she's very visible and vulnerable for a long period of time, right? And you can attack her when she's attached to somebody. She has some immunity frames in there, but for the most part, it's like a Neja, right? Where I'm attaching myself to an enemy in a fixed position. So I'm easy to hit with just about everything. And then when I jump off, I'm in the middle of the team fight. She has a little bit more mobility. Her kit's a lot more complicated than some of the other gods, just to the way you combo and use her poisons. So she's not somebody I would recommend for newer gods. But when you start to get comfortable with the role, your rotations, how to farm, Serket's definitely a god I would pick up. She's phenomenal. You build her kind of, half tanky, half damage. You can get in the middle of team fights. You can bait out a lot of abilities and you can get away with it. She's got great mobility, which kind of helped her, in the new god or new player, what gods for new players list. But her kit's just super, super complicated to use well. And a lot of people don't. So I wouldn't recommend her until you got a lot more comfort in the role. C tier, I only put one god here. Bastet. She's not like total trash, but she's pretty bad, like really bad. And, I think at early levels of play, you got to be really cognizant of CC so that you don't get interrupted when you leap in. Your cats don't really do anything late game. Your damage for the most part is damage over time off of your 2. You have a couple other abilities to do damage, so it's not that big of a deal. But for the most part, she doesn't do anything that everybody else in this list does, or better than everybody else in this list, right? She's just kind of a mediocre everyone, which is why I don't recommend her. She's also super mana hungry and has long cooldowns early game, so I wouldn't pick her up at all. And then we get to the last section of the list. This is the D tier, dumpster tier, trash tier. Don't play these gods in the jungle if you were a new player, sometimes at all. And we'll go over here in a second. The first one going to be the Morrigan. On the surface, Morrigan's character is pretty easy to play, right? She, you invis, you stun, you 1. You invis, you stun, you 2. That's really all you do with her kit. But she is very, very complex in terms of positioning, who you're turning into, when you're turning into them. And for a beginner player, you almost have to have knowledge of what every god on the map can do for abilities in order to play Morrigan effectively, because you need to be able to turn into anybody at any given time. Certainly there's going to be times when one god is better than the other. Being able to switch on the fly based on the situations that you kind of see unfolding in front of you is very important. Would not recommend Morrigan at all. She's a great jungler. She can be played pretty well at higher levels of play, but for a newer player, I wouldn't do that at all. Second is Set. Set just got released a couple patches ago. He's very complex to play. He's kind of underwhelming. You need to have a high degree of awareness of everything on the map. How much anti-heal, what relics, what gods, what CC. He's kind of the combination of all the things that I said made some of these characters weak. And really, he doesn't have a ton of mobility. And, the only thing he really has is his ultimate, which you pop your ult, you can kind of heal up and stay in some team fights. But he's super, super complex to play. I wouldn't play him at all, if you're a new player. Pick him up later. Maybe after a couple of buffs, he'll be better. But even then, like, his kit is just super complicated. He's like Circuit level complicated. And so I wouldn't play him until you're extremely experienced. Odin is garbage. He's a terrible god. They've nerfed everything good about him. His clear is mediocre. His mana costs are high. His cooldowns are long. People have played Odin in the jungle in the past. And he's been very good. But with nothing but utility out of his ultimate, his damage is kind of underwhelming. And, you know, his passive, they gutted it. And it's better now. But he just really doesn't offer anything to the jungle role, especially in the meta today. I think after a couple of buffs, he may come back, especially if they add something to his ultimate. But for right now, he's garbage. Where is he? Loki is trash. Don't play him. He's garbage. He's a bad god. They nerfed the amount of damage that he does with his initial auto attack. So his combo has been nerfed pretty significantly. Hydra's is less effective on him. Power is less effective on him. He's no longer getting protections when he uses his invis. He's been nerfed into the ground, and for good reason. He was never a good jungler to begin with, and now he's even worse. Don't play Loki in the jungle. Literally anywhere else is better than the jungle. His clear is way too slow on top of that. I'll just throw him in here because somebody brought this up after I had already made the list, but Ymir and Athena are two guardians that have been and can be played in the jungle. Athena, people have mentioned because she's getting buffs. What's today? June 23rd. She's getting buffs in a couple of days. She may actually be good. We have yet to see that. I'm going to keep her in D tier until we see that materialize. But you know, she's decent. She does good damage. She's got CC. She's got good scaling on all of her abilities. She's got a dash, so she's got an in and an out. And her ultimate is super impactful for making ganks. So she'll probably climb up this list if you were to ask me in 3 weeks. But for right now, I'll mention her just because people play her. I don't think she's very good. Ymir, same deal. You know, his kit's easier to understand. He's getting a couple of buffs. His kit is straightforward, but he's kind of slow. And if you catch him out of position, he has no mobility. He's got a CC immune ult, but it's really easy to get out of it. I would keep him in D tier now unless something else changes. But yeah, so long story short, if you are new to the jungle, I would really focus on these top 5 gods, maybe flexing down into these top 8 if I really wanted to get good at the role. These are gods that no matter how good you are as a jungler with farming and ganking and everything else, you can still kind of stay in the fight even if you fall behind. And so you're worrying less about the god that you're playing and more about the game that you're playing. These gods make it super, super simple for you to do that. We'll probably be releasing a video on at least 4 out of these top 5 gods. Just with some tips and tricks and starts and other things that you can do to get yourself ahead. And so keep an eye out for that. Make sure you subscribe. But yeah, thanks for watching. Let me know in the comment section what you think. There's obviously going to be disagreement. We already, I checked my Discord. We already had disagreement over this list a long time ago. But this is just a good baseline if you're thinking about going to the jungle and you're not really sure what you should pick, or if you queue and you get the role and you're not comfortable with it. These are just the order of gods that I would pick regardless of what my team needs, especially if I'm more on the inexperienced side. But yeah, thanks again. Be sure to subscribe for more beginner tier lists and videos, and we'll see you guys on the next one.